listening to the Business Communicators. And now your hosts, Austin Stepp and Thomas Bain.
Welcome to another episode of the Business Communicators. My name is Austin Staton, joined alongside Thomas Bain on the #1 podcast for marketing and communications professionals, and that's a verifiable fact. Thomas, we are officially in the fall here in Texas since we were past Labor Day. How's it going, man?
Doesn't feel like fall down here.
No,
the heat dome is still here. We need to get our weather guy back on here to talk about it. But I had an interesting conversation actually relating to weather, just kind of off topic ever so slightly, was about how people create challenges to create solutions to make money. And so somebody was talking about heat and air conditioning making people move, and I was like, but I took away that one little sentence. Other than that, we're good. You know, school's back in session, so it's a little bit quieter around my house in the office. But you know, school being back in session in college, and I think that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, isn't it?
Yeah. So first off, you can follow all of our work. Just search at Biz Communicator on all social media platforms. You can also visit our website, thebusinesscommunicators.com. But we saw this article on LinkedIn that was shared. I guess it was an opinion piece from PR Week, and it was from a student. Her name is, let me make sure I get this right. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Anna Tamke. I'm not 100% certain. But she's a graduate student right now at Rutgers, I believe, is the university that she's at. And her op-ed, I thought it was interesting. It said, college didn't prepare me for PR. And when I initially, saw the title, I was like, oh, well, I mean, that kind of makes sense, because the real world is a little bit different than when you learn in textbook. And then there's a lot of universities that are out there that, some of the people that are teaching these PR and communications classes have never had a corporate job. They've never worked at an agency. They're just strictly academics. And so I was like, okay, let me continue to read on and see what I can gather for this. And I'm just going to read the lead really quickly. It's
I was gonna echo back your teaching statements. A cartoon, boss baby. Those who can do, those who can't teach,
and those that can't teach gym. Little School of Rock throwback.
Yes.
Jack Black, if you remember that from 2003, I think is when the movie came out.
Something like that. But no, this introduction is interesting. I do have a couple thoughts on just her demeanor of being able to write an op-ed piece that gets picked up by PR Week.
Yeah, so we already shared this on our LinkedIn. I don't think we got any comments on it.
We got one.
LinkedIn. Oh, we did?
Got one. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. But the lead of this is the purpose of college is to prepare you for the real world. That's what you always hear and what you believe must be true, since you're spending 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars for an education to ultimately secure a job. It's a rude awakening when you graduate with a PR degree and realize you're unemployed in a post-pandemic world with an unreal expectation for what your working in your field looks like. I'm just going to continue to read this because it's not too long. I started my job search 6 months before graduation, applying for just about every entry-level PR job on the market. I'm still currently looking for a full-time opportunity. Skills for entry-level PR roles include anything from previous pitching expertise, proficiency in Cision, Muckrack, and other media relations software, and at least 1 to 2 years of experience, all tools and skills not typically taught in college classrooms. My university, there was no class on how to form relationships with journalists or how to pitch a story to a media contact list. There wasn't a course offered on teaching client management or the creative thinking necessary to make a client stand out amongst competitors. The American education system failed to teach me as a communication student what I'll actually be required to do in the real world by failing to provide industry exposure. Nursing and pre-med students undergo clinical hours, working in a field, gaining practical experience before formally entering the workforce. Their education aligns with what they will be doing post-graduation. As a PR major, I was taught a fraction of what I've learned my future job will require and was provided a false sense of what the reality of the industry is. I, like my fellow PR and general comms majors, were taught that PR is simply crisis management using an outdated curriculum with textbooks published before the year 2000. This means students are learning how to approach the industry pre-social media, pre-pandemic, and pre-introduction of 2 new generations of consumers in an evolving digital world. I think that was about it. Really short piece. There's a lot of questions that I have, first off, and That's what classes did she take? Did she apply for any internships? You did a little background research on her, found out that she was a student athlete. I think she played lacrosse at her undergrad university. Um, did she ask for any mentors? Did she seek out advice? Did she have conversations with professors? These are all questions on her. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is I think she does raise some valid points that college isn't going to teach you everything, right? Like real world experience is going to give you a leg up. That's why for me, I've said that me working in Baylor athletics in the athletic department, athletic communications, was more valuable than students taking PR because I actually got to learn on the job while I was a student. And I never took a PR class. I never took a journalism class. Uh, but I think networking is something that's incredibly important. But when you look at the corporate world, the 70-20-10 model for professional development, a lot of it's on you, right? I mean, you can only do so much. Things cannot be spoon fed to you. And here's a reality check: the job market is tough right now for everyone. I have a good friend who was a journalist, and he's currently looking for work. He's had a hard time trying to find a comms job. He's had a few contracting gigs here and there, but I'm hearing this from everyone. The job market in 2023 is not the same as it was in 2021 or even 2022. And that's something that people need to understand. So while I do empathize with her and that it is tough to find those entry-level jobs, there's a few things. Other people are going through it. Job descriptions don't always matter sometimes, right? I mean, they can vary. Sometimes you just blanket. I mean, there is some room for growth, but you've got to be proactive. You can't expect things to be spoon fed to you. And I think that's a generational problem, in my opinion.
100% agree. And so I did a couple little bits of research. First off, I'm going to come from the school of thought that a bachelor's degree is not a career degree. And what I mean by that is you can go to a trade school, learn how to weld. You can go to a trade school, learn how to drive a forklift. You can go to trade school and basically become an engineer. The purpose of a bachelor's degree is to make you a well-rounded individual. So yes, you have to take those histories, you have to take those Englishes, you have to take those courses. Well, there's another day of living that I didn't have to do algebra or whatever it is. So because of that mindset, it's trying to make you a well-rounded person. Yes, you focus in on public relations. I did pull up the Rutgers bachelor's degree, and it says you must 6 courses specializing in the communications degree, and 6 of them, and 2 of them must be at the senior level. So the core courses, you can select 2 or take up to 5 of the core. Organizational communications, persuasive communications, organizational reputation and representation, media marketing and communications, crisis comms, and public information. And then there's some electives which kind of go into intercultural, health messaging, communication and facilitation, the dark side of organizations. That one I might actually want to take just to see if I can audit, just to see what it's about. And she says, she goes on to say nursing and other degrees along those lines. You can get an associate's degree in nursing where you focus on nursing. If you want to move up in nursing, yes, you need the bachelor's degree, the master's degree. But those are licensed professions. Anybody can do communications. Anybody can do public relations. Anybody can do advertising. Anybody can do marketing. And so with that being said, the school's not forcing you to go out and do there. And then the other thing I have is theory. I've said it in my consulting, and I say it to companies I've worked for. I'm practicing a theory-based practice. How I communicate to one journalist is not how I communicate to another journalist.
Yeah, each person's different.
How I communicate to one segment of my customer base is different than how I communicate to one segment of my customer base. With that, I am going to get on my soapbox saying that a lot of these advertising, public relations, marketing firms, they like to repackage things that we've done since the 40s and 50s, change the title of it, change out some names, repackage it, and say, this is the newest, latest, and greatest thing. When reality is what they're doing is still the fundamentals of theory based from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up. And so the theory is the tool on how you solve the problem. I am intrigued on the internships. Here in Houston, there's a good friend of mine, Cami. She hosts the social media breakfast here in Houston, and she's
Former guest
having
on the
one.
podcast, yeah.
Yeah. Probably one of the best social media people around too, is they do a gift of giving back. You don't have to it's not a long-term volunteer process. It's one client, let's keep going. You get that experience that they're asking for 1 to 2 years of experience. Everybody I know when I finished my undergrad degree in public relations who went on to work for a PR firm or a corporation wound up having to have a second job because they were making minimum wage. And this was in 2002 after the dot-com bubble. So social media wasn't even around. I learned that I really didn't like cold calling reporters at the end of the day.
It's cold calling sucks.
Not gonna lie. I learned that I don't like cold calling reporters. I don't like cold emailing, even though we do that for the podcast, trying to get guests on here all the time. And so I will dog on my public relations degree a little bit because it was designed for primarily agency work. It never really exposed you much to the corporate comms side of it. But then even you allude to it, while both you and I work in business communications and our other co-hosts work in communications and business communications, we do drastically different jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drastically different jobs. And you and I've always said, specialize in something to get your foot in the door, which from the reading the letter, I don't think she has specialized in any form of communications. Get your foot in the door and then start to branch out and go from there.
Yeah, not every PR job is going to be the same. There's no cookie cutter that exists. And I think that's one of the frustrations I had with the story is there was an expectation of this is what my career is going to be. But in reality, it doesn't matter what the job description says. You're going to be pulled into so many different directions. If you're working on the agency side, which I've done, you're going to have tech clients, you're going to have energy clients, you're going to have healthcare clients, higher education clients, and the demands and the stakeholder groups for each of these businesses is going to vary wildly. And the only way to truly learn is to talk to people, to find out, okay, who is someone that I admire? What career path do I want? Reach out to them on LinkedIn, see if they want to have coffee or can, offer you advice to pick their brain. If you're a college student and you take the initiative to reach out to somebody and have a conversation about, careers, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes. They're going to take that call. I've had a few students that have reached out to me over the past few years, and I've had colleagues that have introduced me to some students. Some are more impressive than others, and some just blow your mind away. And you're like, this person is incredibly talented. The fact that they are taking the time and asking the right questions, it gives them a leg up. And so, sometimes instead of saying, why don't I have a job? I think it's important to say, what can I do to help elevate, my personal understanding of the communications function and what I want to achieve in my career, and how can I go get that? Who can I connect with to maybe give me those opportunities? And we did have a comment that was shared on our LinkedIn, and that was from Matt John, who, full disclosure, I work with in the real world, and he reshared it on his LinkedIn post. He said undergrad co-op programs like the one at MSVU Career Services are absolutely critical, helping students prepare for the workforce out of school. I specifically chose MSVU because of the mandatory co-op requirements. And I think he brings up a great point. We're going to bring him on here in just a moment, but not every school has the same type of focus on communications as other schools, right? I mean, we've talked about the Texas A&M situation, trying to restart their journalism program and that fiasco that's going on, but that's the same for every university. Some schools focus on engineering, some focus on healthcare, some focus on business. If a university isn't focused on communications, if that's not their primary focus, or they don't have a good comm shop, if they don't have good professors, you're not going to get the best training. And maybe you don't realize that going into the university, but I think, if you want to be a communications professional, that outside of high school, if that's what I want to focus on, you should take that correct career path. I mean, if you're in journalism, for example, or sports journalism,
Go to
or
A&M.
broadcasting. Well, if you're sports journalism or sports broadcasting, you're going to go to Northwestern, you're going to go to Syracuse. I mean, those are the institutions, that turn out, great
Missouri and Iowa
exactly.
are both really good journalism departments. Advertising, you have University of Texas, and you have some of the ones on the East Coast, UCLA.
Yeah, but full disclosure, Thomas and I would never encourage anyone to go to the University of Texas.
No, in fact, when I talk to high school students who are asking what to do, I tell them, I'm like, look, choose a major that you want to do. Find the universities that are really, really good in it, but then also make sure the universities are large enough so that if you do change your major, you're not stuck at that little thing. I think Life University is the one that pops in mind the quickest, is because they're a very good chiropractor school and whole body health. The rest of it, not so much. Georgia Tech is another one that comes to mind because they're really good at producing engineers.
Yeah.
And they have an MBA program. But other than that, you don't get much. There's not a whole lot else. And then also choose a school that's large enough that has a decent athletic department so you can have something to do on Sundays or Saturdays.
Have fun. Exactly. But, just we'll bring on Matt shortly. He's in the green room waiting patiently. But I look back to my career, and I've spoken about this numerous times in this podcast. I was an international relations political science major, and that's what I did in high school. I knew that I wanted to go into international business law and politics and foreign policy. That's 100% what I wanted to do. So I researched universities and academic institutions that, could provide me that opportunity. It just so happened that I also like sports. And when I saw my fraternity brothers on the sidelines at sporting events and wondered how I could get down there, and found out that they were working in athletic communications, I applied for a job because I thought it would be cool to get paid to watch sports, and turned out I actually loved communications. And for me, already having the background of having to write, how to communicate, I was a debater in high school. I already had like the natural skills, but that on the job training that I had as a student worker, probably not supposed to say this, but I was working like 40 hours a week. And for me, I knew at that point that was going to be my full-time job, and I needed to put focus on that. Because that was on the job training. That was my internship. That was my, that was my career in college. And I knew that. But let's bring on Matt John real quick. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I saw that you had an away message up, so I think it's probably your day off. Is that right?
No, I had a dentist appointment. So
okay.
I was just I was just out for a little bit there.
Well, thanks for from joining us from Canada. And just for those that don't know, I think like 30% of our audience is actually in Canada, and we're glad to have Matt on because you just got your your graduate degree, correct? It was an MBA, is that right?
No, it's actually an MCM. It's a Master's of Communications Management, and it is a dual degree between McMaster University and Syracuse University.
Well, there we go. We're talking about Syracuse, and here we go. But I really liked your point about the career assistance programs that MSVU provided you. Kind of walk us through that, and kind of what your thoughts were when you read this opinion piece from the student.
So I related to this piece. The reason I shared it was how much this resonated with me. So quick background on me. I started off in college, and college and universities are a little bit different in Canada. So colleges are sort of, most of them don't offer degree programs. They are diploma programs. So I started off in broadcast journalism, did 3 years broadcast journalism. I had a professor who said, you're probably going to spend the first bit of your career working alone in medicine hat and some far outposts by yourself, learning the ropes before you will ever get any money. And this was, it wasn't for me. And then I had a public relations class in my diploma program. And that professor, she was like, I do some consulting work, and I don't get out of bed for less than X amount of dollars an hour. And I was like, this is probably the pathway for me. And so what I did, so after my three-year diploma program in broadcast journalism, I took a postgraduate certificate program in public relations, 1 year. After that program, I began applying for jobs, and I could not even get an interview. And I was really, really struggling.
Yeah.
Was working at a chicken wings and ribs restaurant, and my dad was like, he's like, you got to get a real job or go back to school. And so I was like, you're right, I do. And so I looked at, I said, you know what, I think public relations is where I want to be. And so I looked at public relations programs in Canada, and there were two that focus specifically on public relations. There are communications programs all across the country. These communications degrees are not the same as the degree focused on the practice of public relations. So there were two programs in Canada at the time. One was in Calgary, Alberta, where I live now, called Mount Royal University. And the other one was Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I chose to attend. And I chose to attend specifically because I knew that I wasn't getting interviews because I didn't have any job experience. And I wasn't competitive in that market. And so the program at Mount St. Vincent University had 3 mandatory co-op programs, and you worked with career services, and they had a bunch of postings for various jobs all across different industries, public sector, private sector, government, you name it. So, and you're out there, you are, number one, you have to work.
Yeah.
You have to graduate the program, you got to get a job. And so it puts that pressure on you, but you're then working with the career services department in order to prepare yourself for those interviews. And then you get those interviews, you compete for those jobs, and then you get the experience. And I had really, really great experience. My first co-op was I worked at a startup in Toronto, Ontario. I didn't love it. It wasn't for me. It was not a lot of money for not great work. And then but that was part of that learning experience, right? You go through that. You have to, you
have to sweat a little bit.
You do.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
My next co-op was with the Board of Education in Calgary, Alberta, and they paid really well for an internship, and I got wonderful mentorship, wonderful skills, and helped build my network because I wasn't actually from Alberta, but right out of college, my professional network was in Calgary. So I was able to get a job in Calgary because my director at the time was very well connected. She was able to vouch for me and I got a job in an agency right away, and that was that. I was off, and I was barely out of my degree by the time I had a job. But back to what that opinion piece was saying was, yeah, your degree doesn't prepare you wholly for that. And I take part in the public relations education. I can't remember the name, sorry, but it's a society about developing the future of education for public relations. And they're coming out with a new study here in November that will sort of help shape public relations education going forward. But I would advocate for any student looking at public relations, journalism, anything, internships, super critical.
Internships, networking, and I will give Rutgers on their site about their public relations degree that says you should also join these organizations, and it listed off Public Relations Society of America, the International Association of Business Communicators, the AdFed. And yes, I know we have mixed opinions about professional organizations,
but I think our opinions more come from like mid-career to senior level and kind of the
Yes.
gaps that fall into those places. But I think if you're getting started in your career, they're vital. I don't think it's enough to just join the organizations.
No.
You actually have to get involved in these
Absolutely.
organizations. You have to take leadership positions, because
Absolutely.
that's what I looked at like IABC as, right? Like any of the gaps that I saw in my like personal career, I filled them with IABC by taking on different roles. And for me, I think that helped build out my resume a little bit more. But back to the article. So I think both you, Thomas, and you, Matt, like bring up some great points. I do totally understand where she's coming from, and that college is not always preparing. And I think that's true for a lot of our education system, at least here in the United States as a whole. There are basic things that we don't learn in school that we need to learn about, like, home loans, things that actually matter in your real life world that they don't teach us. That I think I've discussed this on podcast before, but I never realized, maybe it was Cautious Coffee, but I never realized like how crappy my credit score was when I was right out of college, because I worked a job at Louisiana Tech University. I made $1,061 a month, and as a result couldn't pay back student loans at the time, and credit score went to crap. And I didn't realize how important that was until I got my first job, and I'm proud to say that my credit score is wonderful now, but it took time to rebuild that. And I didn't understand the value. I had to learn the hard way on my own. So I fully agree that certain institutions need to do a better job. And I think some of that comes down to hiring and not fully hiring people that are strictly academics. You need to hire people that have real world experience, people that lead agencies, that lead corporate communications teams, that maybe they're retired and they're moving into these professorships. I think that's something that's very important as well. But it's also important to teach them that part of this is on you, right? You've got to go seek these opportunities. It can't be handed to you. And I will say that one frustration that actually comes to mind recently, there's a local community college here in Houston, and of course I always get like LinkedIn alerts on job postings, and I try to share them with friends that I know are looking in the comm space. And there was a community college that had, I think they were looking for like an adjunct professor for crisis communications, something along those lines. And, it was to teach a class, like a 1-hour class, like once a week or on a weekend. And I was like, oh, that would be fun, to do that as, a way to kind of plug in, because I love crisis. And I was looking at the job description. The job description mentioned nothing about having ICS experience, nothing about having real world crisis experience. They wanted someone with a PhD. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. That some of these academic institutions are laser focused on the academic credentials that you must have instead of the real world credentials that you have to have. Because I would much rather have somebody that has been leading a crisis response, whether it's through FEMA, whether it's through hurricanes. I'd rather have these people that have the on the ground experience rather than somebody who has only theorized about it. That's just my 2 cents.
I want to say that all three of us have degrees, as we've talked about.
Some of us barely got them, Thomas and I.
Well, I also have an advanced degree that I actually did really well in, shockingly. But this profession of ours, public relations, advertising, marketing, you technically don't need a degree to do that. If you're a good writer, good communicator, then you should be able to get an internship. Again, you have to have the network to do that, the maturity level to do that, and those kind of things. And I'm going to talk to our older audience a little bit more, especially because while everything's going digital, and she mentions in there social media posts and things like that, social media is its own channel of digital marketing or digital communications. It's a specialty. It's a full-time job. Email marketing, it's a specialty. It's a full-time job. Advertising buying, whether it's paid search, SEO, SEO is more on the PR side, paid search is more on the advertising marketing side of it. Both of those are very distinct skill sets. And while our older people who create the budgets, yes, to get your message out there might be cheaper. To do it right, it's going to cost you just as much as the old traditional marketing, because you're having to hire those experts. You don't have somebody who's good at buying a newspaper ad who can also buy a billboard ad. So my advice to her, get involved. Join those those professional organizations, because student memberships are a lot cheaper. When I was in grad school, I did the same. I joined every professional organization. I was a proud member of PRSA, IABC, AMA, because my dues were $50 a year. And then I had 2 years afterwards to only pay student dues when I was having to front, hundreds of dollars on my own.
Yeah. I will say that, this is something that we spoke on Cautious Coffee, is the education system in America, I think, could be revamped a little bit. And I don't have knowledge in Canada of what it looks like, but I do have a lot of friends that are from Germany. I've been to Germany, gosh, probably about 15 times, teaching baseball camps over there. And so I understand what their education system looks like. And, not everyone goes through the traditional high school path there, right? I think it's like 7th or 8th grade. You kind of pick what your career path is going to be. Some students go on the traditional high school academic route, and some go to the trade route. And, when they're 18 years old or 19 or whatever that graduation age is, they're able to go get a career, as a, something on the trade side, and they're able to make good, successful money because Germany understands, okay, we're going to train these people at a young age. We're going to give them job specific training that is going to help them find that first career. And I wouldn't be disappointed to see that something a similar model here in the United States. Now, granted, sometimes our mindsets change, right? I mean, I wanted to go into law and now I'm in communications, but I think that would be important because it's becoming too outrageous to go to university. Baylor, where I went, I think it was $21,000 a year when I was a student. Now it's $70,000 a year, and that's 15 years difference. Maybe I'm bad at math, but I couldn't afford to go to Baylor University. Now there's just no chance. And while I had a great experience on campus, it wasn't the academics that prepared me. It was the job that I lucked into, right? And the connections that I made as a result of that, being able to build up my network. And, for me personally, after I left Louisiana Tech University, working in the athletic department there, I was able to do some freelance stuff to continue to build my network. And I was, it allowed me to be a little bit more picky when trying to find the right job. But it still took the right person to say yes, to actually understand my resume and understand that me working 4 years in athletics was a full-time job and that the knowledge that I had was transferable toward a corporate communication degree. I mean, it's wild to me when I think back on my career, because I remember getting rejected by agency after agency after agency because they said I didn't have agency experience. And it took the right person. And here's another thing. It was a contract position at first, a 6-month contract that turned into a full-time role. But it took the right person, John Slavny, who was my former boss at BP, who said, I like your experience. We're going to hire you for like an internal communications job, just overseeing the intranet, for our company. And I knew I wanted to do PR eventually. I wanted to get back into it because that's what I did in sports. But, sometimes you can't just go from point A to point B, right? You've got to go a different path. And for me, I think that has helped my career because I've got experience in internal communications. I've got experience in digital. I've got experience in crisis. I've got experience in PR. So I think it helped shape me as a person. And, I was just fortunate that somebody said yes on me. So I totally empathize with her because I've seen the hundreds of rejections and I have friends that are going through that right now and it sucks. But
I empathize, but then at the same token, I'm a little rubbed the wrong way by it because it feels like it's the millennial complaining. Like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm like,
if she's in college now, she's Gen Z.
Okay,
so
whatever.
So don't put it on us millennials, Thomas.
But no, I come from the school of thought that millennials more of a mindset than an actual generation.
How dare you? How dare you insult me as a millennial? You're a millennial too, right?
I'm on the cusp.
Okay.
I'm on the cusp between Gen X and Gen Y.
Okay, I'll just call you a boomer. How about that?
Probably good because when I was there, we had to do pitching for the media with stone tablets and chiseling them out and hand delivering them over there. But again, it's what she makes out of it, and it's what she wants to do, and it's how she positions herself to get there. And you're going to get a lot of no's. We talked about how I pivoted away from PR more into marketing because I learned that I wanted more of the whole picture, not just one facet of business communications. And so that's what drew me to IABC originally after grad school. And then I also did statistics. And so that was my niche, was how do I measure the results of it? Yeah. And now that you can major in marketing communication measurement, you're like, again, that's another one I have a little beef with. A lot of people who are learning how to measure, but they don't understand the theory of what they're measuring. Mm-hmm. Tangent, sorry.
Let's go ahead.
And that's what I was going to say is so it's on her. Take a course, get out there, do some volunteer work. That way you can put it on your resume, you can build experience, and you can actually help out. I know the Red Cross is always looking for help, especially on the local chapters who need internal comms, crisis comms, everything under the sun. Animal shelters are always looking for it. The Boys and Girls Clubs, go volunteer, find something that you're passionate about. That's actually how you probably find a better career in the long run. Anyway.
Yeah. And if I can add, there are these opportunities, but when you're in your undergrad, you don't know these things, right?
No.
And the relationships that you build with your professors, they are not going to go to bat for you, a lot of them. Yep. I'm in my master's program now. One of the selling points my professor told me, he's like, hey, when you graduate, we kind of got a secret handshake, right? And MCM grads recognize that degree, and they know who they're hiring, right? And they, through my professional and my academic network, job opportunities, contract opportunities, research opportunities, all of these types of things. But the knowledge about where to get those opportunities. And this is why I'm very, very big on mentorship. I actually, Mount Royal University has a mentorship program for all of their programs, but I volunteer as a public relations communications mentor. And these are for undergrad students looking for information about what in the world are they getting into. And these, pretty much you're going to see the keeners in there, right? You're going to see the keeners who are taking these opportunities, who are, have their eyes open and ears to the ground about these opportunities. But I'm not sure if these like mentorship, career placement opportunities exist in most universities where you guys are. But and the reason I heard about this opportunity was because my friend ran the program. She's like, hey, we're looking for PR mentors. Would you do it? I was like, absolutely. I've been doing it for like 4 or 5 years now, and it's great. And I hope that some of the things I tell my mentees are like, hey, number one, like I can't get you a job, but I can help you expand your network. I can look at your resume. I can talk to you about what entry-level skills folks are looking for, and I can introduce you to hiring managers, which is what I do. And you're in a much better position looking at your resume, like how to structure your resume, what types of questions you're going to be asked in these interviews, and the different types of things that hiring managers are looking for. And I think you just I think us as practitioners, if you're looking to give back, you're going to see a lot of these stories about, hey, I wasn't ready, I wasn't prepared, I can't compete. We can do a lot better, giving back too, I think as well.
I like to tell the people who are in college and high school, stay in school as long as possible. The real world's not as much fun as the college world is. But then they're always like, well, I'm graduating in like 2 days. I'm like, well, you can change that, but no, actually. And then going into the spiel about, this is where focus on something, get your foot in the door. And Austin and I both said it at the start. And I don't just say college kids. I think professionals is probably 75% of the genuine emails, LinkedIn messages. Hey, I want to learn about you. I want to learn about how you got to where you go. And, I also might want to apply for a job at your company. But starting off with, I want to learn about you, I get 15, 20 minutes of conversation. Sometimes they last an hour and a half. Sometimes they become lifelong friends. Sometimes it becomes
micro mentoring, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Is the higher we advance in our careers, the more likely we are to give back and just ask.
Yeah. Well,
Just
let's
ask.
I know we're getting close to the the end of the hour here. So let's just kind of wrap it up with some of our key thoughts. I've got a few things. So one, kudos to Anna for actually writing the opinion piece. It's getting people to talk about this in our academic system, trying to evaluate like what we can do better as PR professionals, what the academic institutions can do better, and also what we personally can do better. If we are students and we're applying, like what things should we know? Of course, listen to the Business Communicators podcast. That should be the top of your priority as well. So kudos to her for writing the opinion piece. I think there's some personal responsibility that she has, but she's now getting exposure for it, and people are talking
I would
about it.
love
So,
her to be on the show. Let's say if you're
yeah,
listening,
so
Amanda, reach out to us.
Anna, yeah.
Anna,
But
I'm sorry.
we could have reached out to her too. But
Yeah.
but kudos to her. Next, networking is vital. Matt kind of touched on this just a moment ago, but when I left BP, we had career coaches, and our career coach told us that 80% of the jobs that you get hired for are through your personal network, which is insane when you think about it. And it's whether it's an introduction, it's a phone call, something like that, it could at least get your foot in the door. So sometimes getting your foot in the door is the hardest part, and 80% of the time it's because of your personal network. So really value that. We've got a podcast with Phil Morabito on that, talking about how mentoring and networking is one of the most crucial things that you can do for your career and personal development. We'll link that in the show notes below. And lastly, I also want to mention Matt's, I guess, LinkedIn. I think he's approaching his way into a communications thought leader. He had a post, what was it, about a month ago on Trust Talks, Why Trust is Our North Star. And if you haven't read that, we'll link it in the show notes below. But it was an incredible piece, and it really got you thinking. And I thought it was better than some of the stuff that I've read in the Edelman Trust Barometer. So kudos, Matt.
Well, thanks. You can catch part two. I just published part two. It's actually a podcast that I did with a former colleague of mine and a very good friend, Sharon Carr, where we're talking about trust in politics, business, media. She's worked in all three, so really interesting conversation that we had.
We'll definitely link that in the show notes below as well. But Thomas, any parting thoughts?
It's a grind out there. It takes lots of no's to get to a yes. I empathize, but I also, challenge you. What can you do better today than what you did yesterday? And that just doesn't go for communication. That goes for life in general. So stay strong, stay positive, keep moving forward, and expand. When I started my career in public relations and then in marketing, the world has changed drastically. I'm constantly having to relearn and learn and get recertified in things that changed. We talk social media communication, social media marketing. If you want to see what changes, just wait a week, and Facebook/Meta, Google will change the algorithms on you. Amazon will change the algorithms on you. And sometimes they might tell you, sometimes they might not. So that's my stay hungry, stay thirsty, keep moving forward, stay positive.
Good advice. Matt, what about you? Parting words. Thanks for joining us, by the way.
Thank you.
No problem. A couple of things. So I would say number one for students, when you're choosing a school, ask these questions about job placements. Look at the programs. Do they have these co-op programs? In the US, and I found this because I work with a lot of folks in the US, your degree pedigree means so much more in the US than it does in Canada. Where you went to school isn't the biggest deal when you're applying for jobs in Canada. In the US, I found it means a little bit more, your pedigree. So those are decisions you got to make. Are you going to go with the pedigree, or are you going to look at a program that can get you working? Because that's what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to pivot either.
Yeah, for sure. And for schools, this is a differentiator for you. You're resting on your reputation as an educational institution, as a place to go. But part of it, especially why I chose Mount St. Vincent University, a tiny little university in Halifax, was they had a differentiator that was what I needed to get it out into the industry, to get work, and to start a career.
I want to piggyback a little bit on what you just said. Another thing is also choose an industry, or at least a general industry, because I know Austin and I have had conversations both on the podcast and off the podcast, working in certain industries. They want to hire the best PR, marketing communications person for that industry, even though they might not be any good communicators there. A really good communicator can take an industry, be up to speed in days, weeks, because they're going to spend 24 hours a day learning everything they can. But when you're starting off, they want somebody who knows a little bit about shipping. They want somebody who knows a little bit about computers. They want somebody who knows a little bit about this. And so you almost have to get that industry while you're getting your degree.
Yeah, and you know what? It's for students, this is what you do as a practitioner. Environmental scanning. It's fundamental to your job. Knowing who to read, what to read, looking at the trade pubs, looking at the media landscape. That's going to help you, and that's going to be part of your job forevermore. So start that early. Get a good handle on it. I was fortunate enough that media monitoring and analysis was my first job when I worked in an agency. I did that, and that allowed me to go from agency to corporate very easily. So, that'd be it. And pros: give back when you can. Reach out to students, and get active in mentorship, because we can have a hand in shaping what the professionals of tomorrow. So.
Yeah, never stop learning, never stop pushing. I think those are important lessons. But again, thanks to Matt John for joining us on the Business Communicators this week. And again, we'll link his information below in the show notes. Just scroll down, click on it, give him a follow, connect with him on LinkedIn as well. But if you want to follow our work, just search @BizCommunicator on all the social media platforms. You can also visit our website, thebusinesscommunicators.com. But on behalf of our guest, Matt John, my co-host, Thomas Bain, my name is Austin Staton. See you next week. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.